It must have been an exciting time to witness the discoveries of Venus when they were made, and what they meant to scientists at the time. The first images, the first data transmissions, all were groundbreaking at that moment. What we learned from it had scientists confused as to what we had expected when the landing was made. Before we get into the discoveries made during the Venus landing, let's talk about how it was all achieved. Now let's get into the Soviet Union's Venera program, which is like a grand saga of space exploration. This story starts in the early 1960s and goes on for over 2 decades. It's a journey of courage, innovation, and a bit of mystery, much like the quests of ancient explorers, but this time it's in the cosmic ocean. Imagine it's 1961 and here's Venera 1, ready to make history as the first spacecraft to fly by Venus. It's like launching a message in a bottle into the vastness of space, hoping to uncover the secrets of Venus. Venera 1 was packed with cool gadgets, a magnetometer, cosmic ray detectors, stuff that would make any tech enthusiast's heart race. But here's where the plot thickens. Just a week after launch, we lost contact. It's like the spacecraft just vanished into the cosmic void, probably because of a power failure. It was a setback, but think about it. This was humanity's first shot at reaching another planet. Fast forward to 1965, and we have the twin adventurers, Venera 2 and 3, aiming not just to fly by Venus, but to touch its surface, a feat straight out of science fiction. Venera 2 got tantalizingly close, but then silence. It probably got overwhelmed by Venus's hot temper, metaphorically speaking. Then there's Venera 3. Now this one's a dramatic twist. It actually crash-landed on Venus. It was like touching an alien world, but without a word back. No data, no whispers from another world, just a silent landing. It's kind of eerie when you think about it. The first earthly object to touch another planet, and it's just sitting there silent in the Venusian landscape. Let me tell you about the Venera 4 mission in 1967, which was an absolute game-changer in our quest to unravel the secrets of Venus. Launched in June, this intrepid explorer dived into Venus's atmosphere by October, becoming the first mission ever to send us real-time data from another planet's atmosphere. But here's where the drama intensifies. Venera 4, designed to withstand pressures we thought were tough enough, was in for a surprise. Venus's atmosphere was way more crushing than we'd ever imagined. At about 27 kilometers above the surface, our brave little probe couldn't take it anymore. It was a valiant effort, but Venus proved too much for it. Now, riding on the wave of excitement from Venera 4, in come Venera 5 and 6 in 1969. These siblings of space were on a mission to delve even deeper into the enigmatic atmosphere of Venus. They plunged into the Venusian atmosphere, beaming back more data, building on the story that Venera 4 had started. It was like putting together pieces of an interstellar puzzle. But just like Venera 4, they couldn't touch the surface. The extreme conditions of Venus claimed these probes too before they could make a landing. The findings from these missions, especially Venera 4, were monumental. They didn't just give us a glimpse into Venus's atmospheric secrets, they set the stage for future missions. It was like we had just opened a new chapter in space exploration, learning not just about Venus, but also about designing spacecraft capable of withstanding such extreme environments. As the missions evolved, they turned into a real cosmic saga, unveiling secrets of our mysterious neighbor Venus. Let me take you through this amazing journey. In 1975, Venera 9 and 10 were launched, packed with the latest tech to land on Venus. What happened next was nothing short of historic. Venera 9 lands and bam! It sends back the first ever images from Venus's surface. We're talking groundbreaking stuff here. The first time we Earthlings got to see what Venus looks like up close, a rocky landscape that was just mind-blowing. And then, Venera 10 follows up, landing successfully and sending back more pictures. This was a big deal because now we had more than just a glimpse. We had actual clear views of an alien world surface. But the adventure didn't stop there. In 1978, here come Venera 11 and 12 with a mission to dive deeper into the mysteries of Venus's atmosphere and surface. They were like cosmic detectives armed with all sorts of instruments, spectrometers, gas analyzers, you name it. Sure, they ran into some hiccups with their cameras, but the data they sent back, pure gold. They gave us a peek into the chemical makeup and the dynamic nature of Venus's atmosphere. Now fast forward to 1981 and get ready for this. Venera 13 and 14. These missions were out of this world, literally. Venera 13 does something extraordinary. It sends back the first color images of Venus's surface. Imagine that, seeing the surface of another planet in color for the first time. And right on its heels, Venera 14 also sends color images and does all these cool experiments, adding even more to our understanding of Venus. Getting into the Vega program, which was like the grand finale of the Soviet Union's exploration of Venus. In 1984, something truly extraordinary happened with the launch of Vega 1 and Vega 2. These missions were space exploration at its most daring and inventive. They weren't just going to Venus, they had a double agenda. After swinging by Venus, they were set to rendezvous with none other than Halley's Comet. It's like hitting two cosmic birds with one stone. Now here's where it gets really interesting. When Vega 1 and 2 got to Venus, they didn't just orbit or land, they deployed balloons. Imagine that, balloons floating in the alien atmosphere of Venus like something out of a Jules Verne novel. These balloons weren't your average party balloons. They were sophisticated, floating around, collecting all sorts of data on Venus's weather and atmospheric conditions. It was a first in interplanetary exploration, and the kind of stuff that gets you thinking, what else is possible? But the journey didn't end at Venus. After their Venusian escapade, both Vega spacecraft continued on their cosmic path to meet up with Halley's Comet. This was a big deal because comets are like the time capsules of the solar system, and Halley's Comet is the most famous of them all. The Vega missions gave us a chance to peek into the very building blocks of our solar system. Sadly, though, by the late 1980s, things began to change. The Soviet Union started shifting its focus away from Venus, marking the end of an era in space exploration. But let's not forget the impact of the Venera and Vega programs. They were like the trailblazers of space exploration. Now let's discuss some of the incredible discoveries that concern scientists from Russia's Venus landings through the Venera program. These missions were like interplanetary detectives, uncovering secrets of Venus that blew our minds. First off, the atmosphere of Venus, it's almost entirely carbon dioxide. We're talking a whopping 96–97%. This was a huge find. It's like Venus was showing us what a runaway greenhouse effect looks like up close. And the pressure, oh boy, it's like nothing we have on Earth, about 92 times what you'd feel at sea level here. Can you imagine that kind of squeeze? It's like being deep underwater, but on a whole planet. Then there's the heat. Venus is scorching hot, averaging around 465 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt lead. It paints a picture of a world that's not just hostile to life as we know it, but also a brutal challenge for any spacecraft brave enough to land there. And the landscape. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. The Venera probe sent back images and soil data that showed a world shaped by volcanic forces. We're talking about a terrain covered in basalt-like rocks and signs of extensive lava flows. It's a volcanic wonderland that completely changed our view of Venus's geological past. Now get this, Venus's clouds are made of sulfuric acid. Talk about harsh weather. This revelation wasn't just about how extreme Venus is, it also raised big questions about how planets evolve and what kind of tech we need to explore such hostile environments. But here's something really out there. The Venera missions detected lightning in Venus's atmosphere. Yes, lightning. This suggests that Venus has some pretty dynamic and complex weather patterns, despite its slow surface winds and dense cloud cover. It's like Venus is keeping a few secrets up its sleeve, challenging what we think we know about planetary weather. Now lastly, let's get into some of the mind-bending stuff we learned about Venus from the Venera missions, particularly its rotation and magnetic field, and what this all means for future missions. Venus, this enigmatic neighbor of ours, has some peculiar tricks up its sleeve. Firstly, Venus's rotation is a real cosmic oddity. It spins backward compared to most planets in our solar system. That's like watching a ballet dancer suddenly pirouetting in the opposite direction. And talk about taking its sweet time, a day on Venus is longer than its year. Imagine having a birthday every day, that's Venus for you. This slow retrograde spin is more than just an interesting fact. It's crucial for understanding the planet's atmospheric dynamics and why it doesn't have much of a magnetic field. Speaking of magnetic fields, Venus's is incredibly weak. It's like having a faint shield against the solar wind, the stream of charged particles coming from the sun. This weak magnetic field lets the solar wind strip away particles from Venus's upper atmosphere, which is a big deal for understanding how planets lose their atmospheres over time. Now, these findings aren't just cool bits of trivia. They have serious implications for future missions to Venus. The extreme conditions there, The intense heat, crushing pressure, and the corrosive atmosphere are like the ultimate test for spacecraft engineering. It's like designing a car that can drive through a volcano. The data we've got from Venus also makes us wonder about how planets evolve. Venus is like Earth's twisted sister, showing us what happens when the greenhouse effect goes into overdrive. This comparison gives us valuable insights into our own planet's climate and geological history. And here's where it gets really intriguing: the search for life. Sure, Venus's surface seems like the last place you'd find life as we know it, but those discoveries of complex atmospheric chemistry and lightning, they crack open the door to the possibility of life in Venus's upper atmosphere. It's like finding out there might be a hidden oasis in the middle of a cosmic desert. The more we learn about Venus, the more it surprises us, fueling our curiosity and our drive to explore the unknown.
We have been given the scientific knowledge, the technical ability, and the materials to pursue the exploration of the universe. To ignore these great resources would be a corruption of a God-given ability.
So you're curious about why NASA isn't moonwalking like in the good old Apollo days, right? Let me take you on a journey through the cosmic shifts in NASA's lunar exploration. Let's discuss what was learned during the moon missions which led to NASA not wanting to return to the moon. The Apollo program was a series of space missions undertaken by NASA with the goal of landing humans on the moon and returning them safely to Earth. This historic endeavor, while achieving groundbreaking successes, also faced significant challenges during its missions. Imagine this: Apollo 11, a mission straight out of science fiction, is on its way to make history by landing humans on the moon for the first time. But as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, two astronauts braver than most, descend in their lunar module, things start going haywire. The onboard computer starts freaking out, flashing 1,202 inches and 1,201 inches alarms. Picture a computer so overwhelmed it's rebooting itself in the middle of a lunar landing. It turns out a simple radar switch was out of place, making the computer do extra work. Now here's where it gets wild. Mission Control, those geniuses back on Earth, quickly figure out that despite these scary alarms, the mission isn't doomed. But Armstrong, cool as a cucumber, sees they're headed toward a field of boulders. So what does he do? He takes manual control, steering away from danger and landing with less than 30 seconds of fuel left. Talk about a close call. Now let's talk about Apollo 12. These guys were aiming to land near the Surveyor 3 probe to do some next-level lunar science. But get this, just 36 seconds after launch, their Saturn V rocket gets hit by lightning. Yes, lightning in space. This zap knocks out their power and suddenly they're flying blind. But the crew, with nerves of steel, don't panic. With a bit of quick thinking, suggested by a flight controller named John Aaron, they flip a switch, SCE to AUX. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? And just like that, they get their power and data back. The mission continues as planned, and they nail their lunar landing near Surveyor 3. Apollo 13, a mission that was literally an out-of-this-world roller coaster of events. It was supposed to be NASA's third time landing humans on the moon. The crew, James A. Lovell, John L. Swigert, and Fred W. Hayes, were all set for what was meant to be another historic space journey in 1970. But guess what? Space had other plans. 2 days after they launched, while they were cruising to the moon, something unbelievable happened. One of their oxygen tanks went kaboom. And it wasn't just any simple malfunction. An electrical fault turned it into a ticking time bomb. During a pre-launch test, someone had hooked up a heating element with too much juice, and it damaged the tank. When it exploded, it was like a scene from a sci-fi movie, but real. The explosion was so severe it knocked out their main power and heat source. Imagine being in the cold, vast space without heat and enough air. It was a nightmare scenario. But here's where it gets impressive. The crew, instead of panicking, coolly reported to Mission Control with the now iconic line, "Houston, we've had a problem." They then turned their lunar module, which was meant for moonwalking, into a life-saving lifeboat. Talk about being resourceful. Now, the spacecraft needed to get back to Earth, but it was on a lunar trajectory. So they did this incredible mid-space U-turn using the lunar module's engine. And think about this, they were living in a space meant for 2 guys for a couple of days, but now they had to stretch that for 4 days. They even had to jerry-rig a device to scrub carbon dioxide from the air using stuff they had on hand. It was like an episode of Space MacGyver. Despite being cold and conserving power like it was the last battery on Earth, they managed to power up the command module just in time for re-entry. And voila, they made a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean, safe and sound. Apollo 13 is more than just a space mission. It's a story of not giving up, of turning a potential disaster into a story of survival and quick wit. It showed how crucial it is to stay calm and work together when everything is going south. This mission, with its drama and nail-biting moments, has been told and retold in books and movies because, let's face it, it's the kind of stuff legends are made of. It's a reminder of the risks of space travel, but also of the incredible capabilities of humans when faced with the toughest challenges. Now let's explore the treasure trove of discoveries from those incredible moon landings and missions. It's like unraveling the secrets of an ancient cosmic time capsule. Starting with the Apollo missions, they literally kicked up some moon dust, called regolith, which is like the confetti of countless meteoroid parties over billions of years. And the rocks they brought back? Oh boy, they were a mixtape of lunar hits, basalts, and orthosites, all singing tales of the moon's complex geological past. We even found bits of the moon's highlands, the old timers, which showed us how the moon's crust first got its groove. But wait, there's more. Those Apollo missions were like cosmic detectives, setting up seismic experiments that listen to the moon's heartbeat or, well, moonquakes. These moon tunes helped us sketch out what's under the moon's surface, a crust, a mantle, and this tiny, partly molten core, quite different from Earth's big, lively core. Now get this, the story of how the moon was born. It's like a celestial drama. Lunar rocks whisper that the moon might have been born from this massive cosmic collision between Earth and a Mars-sized body. It's like Earth had a mega space crash and the moon was the result. And the moon's not some youngster either. It's about 4.5 billion years old, practically Earth's twin in age. But the plot thickens. Water on the moon? Yep, you heard that right. Initially, the Apollo guys didn't spot it, but later some brainy folks re-examined those lunar samples and bingo, signs of water. This was later confirmed by other missions, making us rethink our whole moon as a dry rock story. Now let's not forget the lunar program by the Soviet Union. They were the first to crash the far side of the moon's party with Lunar 3, showing us pictures of a landscape that's pretty different from the near side. More mysterious, more cratery. And the recent missions. They're like the new detectives on the lunar block. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and India's Chandrayaan-1 have been scoping out water ice in the moon's shadowy nooks. Crucial stuff if we're thinking of moon stays. Plus, the LRO's been mapping the moon like nobody's business, giving us the moon's version of Google Maps. But there's even more. The moon's got this super thin atmosphere, and the Lady mission was like a lunar environmentalist studying it, along with all the dust floating around. All these lunar escapades have taught us a ton about how planets get their act together, their history, and even about our own solar system's backstory. It's like the moon's been holding a diary of solar system secrets and we've just started reading it. And the tech. The challenges of playing detective on the moon have sparked all sorts of cool tech and science upgrades. Finally, let's get into reasons why NASA won't be returning to the moon. First off, NASA's got bigger fish to fry these days. Sure, the moon is cool, but now they're eyeing Mars and even deeper space. Think of the Artemis program as their new playground. They're planning to hang out on the moon, but really it's like a practice run for the big show on Mars. Now let's talk tech. The gadgets and gizmos they used during Apollo are, well, ancient history. Today's space tech is like something out of a sci-fi novel. This isn't just a change in toys, it's a whole new ballgame in terms of how they plan and execute these missions. It's like swapping a horse carriage for a sports car. Budgets, the eternal buzzkill. Space exploration costs a cosmic fortune, and NASA has to be smart about where they spend their cash. They've got a lot on their plate, from unmanned missions to hanging out on the International Space Station and even peeking into the depths of space. Here's where it gets interesting. Space is no longer just a NASA show. It's like a cosmic United Nations up there, with the European Space Agency, Russia's Roscosmos, and others all joining the party. Oh, and let's not forget the new kids on the block, private space companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, shaking things up. The moon's been under NASA's microscope since Apollo, and they've learned a ton. But now they're casting their gaze further, Mars, asteroids, the outer planets. It's like they've read the moon's diary and are now curious about the diaries of its celestial buddies. Safety's a big deal too. Space is as unforgiving as it gets, and after some heartbreaking losses like the Space Shuttle Challenger and Columbia, NASA's not taking any chances. This means they're super cautious about how they send humans into space now. Sustainability's the new buzzword. NASA's working on this cool thing called the Lunar Gateway, a space station that's going to orbit the moon. It's like a pit stop for astronauts, making it easier to come and go from the lunar surface, and maybe even hop over to Mars someday. Public and political support for space missions is like a roller coaster. Back in the Apollo era, it was all about beating the Soviets to the moon. Now, space missions have to compete for attention and funding with other big-ticket issues back on Earth. And finally, let's not forget our robotic friends. Robots in space have come a long way. They're like the remote-controlled scouts of the cosmos, often doing the risky stuff instead of humans. In a nutshell, NASA's lunar game has changed big time. It's not just about planting flags on the moon anymore. It's about sustainable, collaborative exploration with an eye on the whole universe. How cool is that? Have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered what lies on its unseen side? The moon's far side, often mistakenly called the dark side, despite receiving just as much sunlight as the side facing Earth, has been a subject of fascination and mystery for centuries. It wasn't until 1959 when the Soviet Luna 3 spacecraft sent back the first images of this hidden hemisphere that we got our first glimpse of what was there. This side of the moon is markedly different from the one we see. It's rugged, densely cratered, and lacks the large, dark basaltic plains, or maria that are so prominent on the near side. The moon's far side, largely hidden from the Earth, has been a fertile ground for conspiracy theories and wild speculations, largely because of its relative mystery and inaccessibility. One of the most persistent theories is that the far side of the moon harbors evidence of extraterrestrial life or even alien bases. This theory gained traction in part due to the lack of detailed imagery of this lunar region until the latter part of the 20th century, allowing imagination to fill in the gaps in knowledge. Some conspiracy theorists argue that structures visible in photographs from lunar missions are artificial, perhaps remnants of an ancient alien civilization. They often point to certain features that appear unnatural or too geometrically regular to be the result of natural processes. These claims, however, are typically based on misinterpretations of low-resolution images, where pareidolia, the human tendency to see recognizable shapes in random patterns, often comes into play. Another popular theory posits that the moon, particularly its far side, is a strategic observational post for extraterrestrial spacecraft monitoring Earth. Proponents of this theory often cite unexplained anomalies in radio communications experienced by Apollo astronauts when they orbited the moon's far side, suggesting these were attempts at alien contact or interference. However, experts explain that these anomalies were more likely due to technical issues with radio equipment or natural interference from the lunar environment. The idea of an alien base on the far side of the moon was further fueled by the mysterious termination of the Apollo program. Some theorists believe that astronauts encountered signs of alien life during their missions, leading to a hasty and secretive end to lunar exploration. They suggest that subsequent missions and satellite imagery of the moon have been doctored or withheld from the public to hide these facts. However, historical records and testimonies from those involved in the Apollo program paint a different picture, attributing the program's end to budgetary constraints and shifting governmental priorities. There are also claims that certain craters and other geological formations on the far side are perfectly shaped or positioned in ways that defy natural explanation, suggesting they are either alien-made or hold some form of hidden message or technology. These claims, however, lack substantial evidence and are generally dismissed by the scientific community. Despite these conspiracy theories, scientific missions and studies have consistently supported natural explanations for the features observed on the moon's far side. High-resolution images and data from various lunar missions, including recent ones like the Chinese Chang'e 4 mission, have provided detailed insights into the moon's geology, all pointing to natural formations and processes. The far side of the moon, often shrouded in mystery and intrigue, presents a landscape strikingly different from the familiar face that greets us each night. This hidden hemisphere of the moon, first revealed in detail by the Soviet Luna 3 spacecraft in 1959, is a tapestry of craters, mountains, and highlands, a stark contrast to the Maria-dominated near side. One of the most striking features of the moon's far side is its rugged terrain. This side of the moon is heavily cratered and has fewer of the smooth, dark basaltic plains, or maria, that are so prominent on the near side. The absence of extensive maria on the far side has led scientists to surmise that the crust there is thicker, making it less susceptible to volcanic activity that formed the maria. This difference in crustal thickness is thought to be a relic of the moon's formation and early history. When the moon was forming and still molten, heavier elements sank to its center, creating a denser mantle and crust on the side facing Earth. The most prominent feature on the far side of the moon is the South Pole Aitken Basin, one of the largest and oldest impact craters in the solar system. Measuring about 2,500 kilometers in diameter and about 13 kilometers deep, this colossal crater provides valuable insights into the moon's geological history. Studies of the basin have revealed unusual mineral compositions, suggesting that the impact might have been so powerful that it penetrated through the crust and into the mantle. This has significant implications, as it offers a rare opportunity to study the moon's interior composition. The lunar far side also hosts several other notable features, such as the Tsiolkovsky crater, named after the Russian space pioneer. This crater, with its complex structure and distinctive dark halo, is a subject of intense scientific interest. The halo is believed to be a result of volcanic activity, indicating that the far side of the moon was not always geologically inactive. Another intriguing aspect of the far side is the lunar highlands, an extensive area covered with peaks and valleys. The highlands are composed predominantly of anorthosite, a type of rock formed from magma. These rocks are lighter in color and older than the basaltic rocks that fill the maria, providing a window into the moon's past. The highlands are pockmarked with craters, each telling a story of the moon's long history of cosmic bombardment. The far side of the moon also has fewer mascons, or mass concentrations, which are large areas of dense material sitting beneath the surface. Mascons are responsible for the gravitational anomalies that affect the orbits of spacecraft around the moon. Their scarcity on the far side further underscores the dichotomy between the two hemispheres of our lunar neighbor. The scientific exploration of the moon's far side, a region untouched by direct sunlight for centuries, has been a subject of immense interest and curiosity within the scientific community. This interest intensified following the historic moment in 1959, when the Soviet Luna 3 spacecraft first captured images of this mysterious lunar hemisphere. These images revealed a terrain vastly different from the familiar near side, with a lack of large maria and an abundance of craters, igniting a desire to learn more about this uncharted territory. One of the most significant breakthroughs in the exploration of the moon's far side came with NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO, launched in 2009. The LRO's mission, among other objectives, included mapping the moon's surface in unprecedented detail, providing scientists with critical data about its topography, temperature, and mineral composition. This data has been instrumental in enhancing our understanding of the moon's geological history and has helped identify potential landing sites for future missions. The Chinese Chang'e 4 mission, which landed on the moon's far side in January 2019, marked a new chapter in lunar exploration. This mission, which included the Yutu-2 rover, was the first to perform a soft landing on this part of the moon, achieving what had been a long-standing objective for space explorers. One of the key scientific goals of Chang'e 4 is to analyze the chemical composition of the lunar surface, particularly in the South Pole Aitken Basin, a vast impact crater that could offer clues about the moon's early history and its crust's composition. Chang'e 4 also carries instruments to conduct low-frequency radio astronomical observations. The far side of the moon is an ideal location for these observations due to its shielding from the Earth's electromagnetic noise. This makes it a perfect spot to study the space environment and solar bursts, and potentially to observe the early stages of the universe, free from the interference experienced on Earth. In addition to these missions, there are also proposals for building robotic and human bases on the far side of the moon. These bases could serve as crucial steps in deep space exploration, including manned missions to Mars and beyond. The far side's unique geology offers opportunities for extensive scientific research, including the study of the moon's tectonic activity and the testing of new space technologies in a challenging environment. Furthermore, the exploration of the moon's far side could play a vital role in understanding the dynamics of Earth-Moon interactions. Studies of the moon's crust and mantle on this side can provide insights into the thermal evolution of the moon and its orbital dynamics, which in turn can shed light on Earth's geological history and the conditions that led to life on our planet. The far side of the moon, often overlooked in favor of its more familiar counterpart, holds immense strategic significance for both scientific and exploratory missions in space. One of the key factors contributing to its importance is the unique radio silence it offers. Shielded from the Earth's electromagnetic interference, the moon's far side presents an ideal location for deep space radio observatories. The absence of Earth-originated radio noise provides a pristine environment to study the universe in the radio spectrum, allowing astronomers to detect faint signals from the distant cosmos that would be lost in the cacophony of Earth's radio emissions. This radio silence opens up possibilities for studying phenomena such as the cosmic microwave background radiation and searching for signals from the early universe. It could also enhance the search for extraterrestrial intelligence by providing a clearer view of the cosmos, free from the clutter of human-made signals. Establishing radio observatories here could lead to groundbreaking discoveries in astrophysics, giving us insights into the formation of the first stars and galaxies, the nature of dark energy, and the evolution of the universe. Another aspect of the far side's strategic importance is its geology. The South Pole Aitken Basin, one of the largest known impact structures in the solar system, is located here. This basin is believed to have exposed the lunar mantle and could contain rocks with a different composition than those found on the near side. Exploring this basin could yield valuable information about the moon's formation and its geological history, which in turn could shed light on Earth's early history and the conditions that led to life on our planet. Furthermore, the far side of the moon is of interest for future manned lunar missions and potential permanent bases. The challenges posed by its rugged terrain and the lack of direct communication with Earth make it an ideal testbed for technologies that could be used for long-duration space missions, including those to Mars. The isolation provides an opportunity to develop and test life support systems, habitats, and other technologies in an environment that closely mimics deep space conditions. In addition, the moon's far side holds potential for resource exploitation. The discovery of water ice in permanently shadowed craters, particularly near the lunar South Pole, is of great interest. Water is not only vital for supporting life, but can also be broken down into hydrogen and oxygen, providing fuel and breathable air for astronauts. The ability to utilize these resources on site could be crucial for the sustainability of long-term lunar bases and for future deep space exploration missions. The strategic importance of the moon's far side extends to its potential as a stepping stone in human space exploration. Establishing a presence here could serve as a springboard for missions further into the solar system. The experience gained in operating in this remote and challenging environment would provide invaluable knowledge and skills for future exploration endeavors. Let's take a journey to Mars and talk about some of its most intriguing and mysterious features. First off, there's the famous face on Mars in the Cydonia region. This one really stirred up a lot of excitement back in 1976, when the Viking 1 orbiter snapped a photo that, from a certain angle and lighting, looked like a humanoid face. This mesa, about 1.5 kilometers across, really got people talking. Scientists say it's just pareidolia, where our brains trick us into seeing familiar patterns like faces in random shapes. It's a survival thing, really, helping us recognize faces from way back in our evolution. But as we got better technology and more detailed images from missions like Mars Global Surveyor and Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the face turned out to be just a natural rock formation. Different angles and lighting showed that the face-like appearance was just an optical illusion. It's likely shaped by wind erosion, which is pretty common on Mars even with its thin atmosphere. Now, despite all the scientific explanations, the face on Mars has sparked a lot of imagination. People have come up with all sorts of theories about ancient civilizations on Mars. It's fascinating how we humans love to find patterns and weave stories out of the unknown. Another mysterious feature on Mars is the recurring slope lineae, RSL. These are weird, dark streaks on Martian slopes, especially in the southern hemisphere. They're a few meters wide and stretch out for hundreds of meters. What's intriguing is that they darken and seem to flow downhill in warmer seasons and then fade in cooler ones. Initially, scientists thought these might be signs of salty liquid water because they appear in warmer conditions, kind of like water flows on Earth. But here's the twist. Mars isn't really friendly to persistent liquid water, what with its thin atmosphere and super low temperatures. So now scientists are thinking these RSL might be caused by something like dust or sand moving downhill, or maybe even shallow subsurface water or brines, which don't freeze as easily as pure water. Why is this important? Well, if there's water, it might mean Mars could have environments where life could exist, or could have existed. And then there are these glassy deposits found in Martian impact craters. These are believed to form from the intense heat when a meteorite strikes Mars. The heat and pressure melt the soil and rocks, and when it cools down, you get glass. This is super cool because these glass deposits could trap and preserve ancient organic materials. So if Mars ever had life, these glass deposits might be like a time capsule, holding biological signatures or even fossils. Studying these glass deposits isn't easy though. You need precise landing and sampling techniques, and even with advanced rovers like Perseverance, it's a challenge to get clear data from these deposits. But if we can get it right, we could learn so much about Mars' past environments, its history of impacts, and maybe even find clues about life on Mars. Now let's shift gears to Phobos, Mars's moon, which is equally intriguing. Phobos is covered in these linear grooves that have left scientists scratching their heads for a long time. These grooves are huge, running several kilometers long and a few hundred meters wide. The Viking missions were the first to get a good look at them, and since then, everyone's been trying to figure out their story. One theory is that they're from debris that got thrown up by impacts on Mars or Phobos itself. Another interesting take is that they might be caused by the tidal forces from Mars. Imagine the gravitational pull of Mars stretching and stressing Phobos' interior, leading to these surface fractures. There's also a bit of worry that these grooves might be a sign of structural stress in Phobos, possibly hinting at a future where Phobos could break apart. Or these grooves could be from secondary impacts, where stuff ejected from Mars during big meteor strikes ends up hitting Phobos. You won't believe the amazing plans various space agencies and even private companies have up their sleeves. Take NASA, for example. They're teaming up with the European Space Agency for something straight out of a sci-fi movie. They've got the Perseverance rover already on Mars gathering rock and soil samples. The next step? They're planning to send another rover to pick up these samples and then shoot them into orbit around Mars. From there, an orbiter will swoop in and bring them back to Earth. Imagine having actual pieces of Mars right here. But wait, there's more. China, riding high on the success of its Tianwen-1 mission, is also planning a Mars sample return mission. They're eyeing around 2030 for this grand venture. They're going to scoop up some Martian dirt and rocks and bring them back for us to study. It's like a cosmic treasure hunt. The Europeans aren't far behind. ESA, in cahoots with Roscosmos, is gearing up to send the Rosalind Franklin rover to Mars. It was supposed to head off in 2020 but got delayed. This rover is like a detective, equipped with a drill to dig beneath the Martian surface, searching for clues of past life. Think about it, we could find evidence of ancient Martian microbes. India's not sitting this dance out either. After the success of their first Mars mission, Mangalyaan, they're prepping Mangalyaan 2. This one's a triple threat, an orbiter, a lander, and a rover. They're planning a comprehensive exploration of Mars, from its atmosphere down to the nitty-gritty of its surface. Now Elon Musk and SpaceX, they're in a league of their own. They're not just talking about visiting Mars, they're talking about setting up shop there. With their Starship spacecraft, they're planning to send people to Mars, maybe as soon as the mid-2020s. They want to build a sustainable human presence on Mars. Can you imagine? Humans living on another planet. And then there's the UAE, fresh from their Hope probe success. They're building a Mars science city right here on Earth. It's like a rehearsal space for living on Mars, testing out all the tech and living conditions we'll need for when we make the big leap to the Red Planet. Russia's also in the game. Roscosmos is cooking up plans for their own Mars missions. They're talking about orbiters, landers, maybe even bringing back some Martian souvenirs. Back to NASA, they're using their Artemis program aimed at returning humans to the Moon as a stepping stone for Mars. They're looking at sending astronauts to Mars in the 2030s. This is huge. We're talking long-duration space travel, life support in deep space, the whole 9 yards. And it's not just the big space agencies. Private ventures and collaborations are popping up with all sorts of ideas, from testing new technologies to potentially sending tourists to Mars. Can you believe it? Mars tourism. Lastly, there are all these smaller missions being planned by different countries and organizations. They're focusing on specific research goals like understanding Martian weather, its atmosphere, and maybe even finding signs of life. Plus, they're testing out tech that we might use for living on Mars. Now picture this. You're on a spacecraft heading to Mars, a trip that's going to take about 6 to 8 months, depending on when you leave and what kind of tech is powering your ride. Now, the distance we're talking about is massive, like 54.6 million kilometers when Mars and Earth are closest. So what's this spacecraft like? Well, it's not your average shuttle. We're talking about a vessel with all the bells and whistles. It's got to be roomy because you'll be living there for months. It's got everything, places to sleep, eat, work out because you've got to stay fit in zero gravity, and even a lab for science experiments. But here's the kicker. It's got to be super safe. You're traveling through space where there are all kinds of hazards, like space radiation and tiny meteoroids, and everything's got to have a backup in case something goes wrong. Now let's talk about staying alive and well on this epic voyage. The spacecraft is like a mini Earth. It recycles air, water, and even waste. Yes, you heard that right, waste. Food's a big deal too. You've got your standard space meals, but there might also be a mini garden on board, and hey, maybe even a 3D food printer. But it's not just about keeping your body healthy, it's also about your mind. Being cooped up in a spacecraft for months, far from home, that's tough. So there's got to be ways to keep spirits high, like staying in touch with folks back on Earth, even though messages take a while to get there and back. Plus, there might be virtual reality for some escapism, and personal spaces for some alone time. Let's not forget about space radiation. It's a big deal when you're out there. The spacecraft needs some serious shielding. Imagine using water or special materials to keep those cosmic rays at bay. Some are even toying with the idea of using the fuel as a shield. Pretty clever, right? Navigating in space is another story. You're not just cruising on a highway, you're traveling through the cosmos. Astronauts need to be sharp with their space maps and maybe get a little help from automated systems. And landing on Mars, that's not a walk in the park. Mars has a really thin atmosphere, so the spacecraft needs some high-tech gear like heat shields, parachutes, and maybe something like those sky cranes that NASA's rovers used. So there you have it, a trip to Mars in a nutshell. It's a wild mix of advanced tech, human ingenuity, and a whole lot of courage. We're talking about one of the most extraordinary adventures humanity has ever embarked on. It's not just science fiction anymore, it's becoming reality, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. Today, we're jumping into the thrilling and mysterious world of NASA, UFOs, and all that secret tech that could be out there. Now, this isn't just stuff you find in sci-fi books. We're diving into the heart of some mind-blowing conspiracy theories. Let's break them down and chat about the people who've brought these wild ideas into the spotlight, such as the different alien types and what technology NASA may have. So, have you ever wondered if NASA's hiding some really cool alien tech? There's a bunch of theories out there that suggest they might have gadgets that are way more advanced than anything we've seen. Some people think NASA, maybe with a little help from other secret groups, got their hands on this stuff from UFO crash sites or through some sneaky deals with aliens. Just think about what that could mean for us. And then there's talk about NASA making some groundbreaking discoveries, like crazy good propulsion systems or entirely new energy sources. But here's the catch, these breakthroughs might be top secret. Why, you ask? Maybe they want to keep things just the way they are, or they're worried about this tech getting into the wrong hands. There's also this idea that what NASA shows us is just a small part of what they're really up to. Some folks speculate about hidden missions, secret bases on the Moon or Mars, and even close encounters with extraterrestrials in space. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi blockbuster. Let's chat about some interesting characters in the UFO world. Bob Lazar. This guy's pretty famous in UFO circles. He claimed he was working on reverse engineering alien spaceships near the mysterious Area 51. He talked about the government having a few of these spacecraft and even mentioned using an element called moscovium for propulsion, long before it was officially recognized. Pretty wild, right? Gary McKinnon. He's the British hacker who made the news for breaking into US military and NASA computers. Gary claimed he stumbled upon evidence of a secret space program, including lists of non-terrestrial officers and details about transferring materials between space fleets. It sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. Paul Hellyer, the former Canadian Minister of Defense turned UFO enthusiast. He's been pretty vocal about governments keeping the reality of UFOs and alien visitors under wraps. Paul believes that aliens have been visiting Earth for a long time and that this is a big secret shared among world governments. Edgar Mitchell, an Apollo 14 astronaut who wasn't shy about his belief in extraterrestrial life and UFOs, he suggested that the government has been hiding info about UFOs for ages, though he didn't have concrete proof to support his claims. Okay, let's start with the grey aliens. Just picture them. They're not very tall, kind of slender with this really smooth grey skin. But the most striking thing about them, their heads are huge, especially compared to their bodies, and they've got these big, almond-shaped black eyes. It's like they're staring right into your soul. And they don't have regular ears or noses, just small openings, and their mouths are super tiny. Ever since the Roswell UFO incident back in '47, these greys have been the talk of the town. They've become a huge part of science fiction, popping up in books, movies, TV shows, you name it. They're basically the face of the whole alien concept. But get this, in a lot of stories and supposed encounters, these greys are super smart and have technology that's way ahead of ours. We're talking about high-tech spacecraft, maybe even telepathic powers, and all sorts of gadgets, often used for mysterious medical procedures. And yeah, there's a lot of talk about abductions, which just adds to the intrigue and, let's be honest, the spookiness. Next up, green aliens. These guys are a bit more like us. Humanoid, you know? They've got green skin and more familiar features like ears, noses, and mouths. Some of them even have antennae or other unique features. Green aliens have been a big part of early science fiction. You've probably seen them in old movies and cartoons, sometimes friendly, sometimes not so much. They might not be as popular as the greys these days, but they're still iconic in their own right. What's cool about them is how versatile they are in stories. Some are just curious about us humans, while others seem to have more, let's say, ambitious plans. It's what makes them such great characters in sci-fi. And now the robot-alien hybrids talk about a mind-blowing concept. Imagine a creature that's part machine, part alien. Some parts of their body are totally mechanical, like something out of a high-tech lab, while others are organic. This idea is huge in science fiction. It's where we play around with the idea of blending biology with technology. And of course, there are all sorts of theories about them, like maybe they're watching us or have some secret mission on Earth. These hybrids are often shown as super intelligent and strong, way beyond what any human or regular machine can do. But emotionally, they're a bit of a mystery. They might not feel things the way we do, which really gets you thinking about what it means to be alive. So what's the deal with NASA and aliens? Well, NASA's pretty straightforward about it. They're like, nope, we haven't found any extraterrestrial life or tech. Their gig is exploring space, looking for any signs of life, but as of now, they haven't stumbled upon any alien spaceships. But of course, that doesn't stop all the talk and theories in the UFO world. Alright, despite NASA saying they haven't found anything alien, the conspiracy theories are buzzing. Some folks are convinced NASA's playing a bigger game, keeping secrets alongside other government bodies. They think NASA's hiding proof of alien visits or even stashing away some high-tech alien gadgets. And when you see weird stuff in NASA's footage, like unexplained objects, people are quick to shout UFO. But a lot of these can be explained as just space junk or tricks of the light. Now let's chat about Bob Lazar, a name that's pretty controversial in UFO circles. In '89, this guy claimed he was reverse engineering alien tech at a secret spot near Area 51. He even mentioned working with this mysterious element 115 to power these crafts. He described seeing saucer-like spaceships zooming around like nothing we've got on Earth. But here's where it gets dicey. People have poked holes in Lazar's story, questioning his background and the truth behind his wild claims. Don't forget, the US government's been peeking into UFOs for a while now. Remember Project Blue Book? From the 50s to the 60s, they were all about documenting and analyzing UFO sightings. But in the end, they were like, nothing to see here, folks. Most of the stuff they saw, they could explain, and they didn't find any evidence of little green men in flying saucers. In recent years, UFOs have made a comeback, especially with the Pentagon showing off videos of Navy pilots running into some unidentified aerial weirdness. These clips have got people talking again about aliens and their rides. But the big guys in the government, they're still not signing off on any of these being extraterrestrial. Let's dive into these NASA theories. Some folks reckon NASA astronauts have bumped into UFOs or other bizarre things out there in the vastness of space, but are keeping mum about it. People point to videos that look a bit fishy, strange stuff in space mission photos, or even mysterious comments from astronauts as proof that there's more than meets the eye. Now, onto the really juicy stuff, alien structures on the Moon and Mars. There's talk that NASA's stumbled upon alien buildings or artifacts on these far-off places, but is keeping the pictures under wraps. Imagine that, secret bases on the dark side of the Moon or oddities in photos from the Mars rovers. It's like something straight out of a science fiction novel. And then there's the idea that NASA's got its hands on some super advanced alien tech that's just way out of our league. Think propulsion systems that could totally revamp space travel, or other crazy technologies that could flip our world on its head. One event that gets a lot of attention is the so-called tether incident from 1996. A satellite tether snaps, and the video shows some weird objects floating around. Some say they're UFOs. NASA says they're just ice particles. It's a real head-scratcher. Let's talk about some big names in the UFO scene. Edgar Mitchell, an Apollo astronaut, didn't shy away from talking about his belief in UFOs and aliens. He even went as far as to say that the Roswell incident was legit and that aliens have made contact with Earth. Then there's Gordon Cooper, another astronaut, who claimed he saw a UFO while piloting a jet, and another sighting at Edwards Air Force Base. And let's not forget Gary McKinnon, the British hacker who broke into NASA and military computers and claimed to have found evidence of a secret space program and UFO tech. But, as intriguing as these theories are, we've got to keep our feet on the ground. A lot of these ideas are based on misunderstandings, a lack of solid evidence, or just plain old misinformation. NASA and other scientific groups have given pretty logical explanations for these supposed oddities, pointing to things like optical illusions or just regular space stuff. And really, with so much information now available to us all and NASA's active search for extraterrestrial life through programs like SETI and Mars missions, it's tough to believe they'd be able to keep a secret this huge. NASA, the United States Space Agency, has made numerous discoveries over the years, many of which have expanded our understanding of space, our solar system, and the universe. While most of these discoveries are awe-inspiring and enlightening, there have been a few that could be considered disturbing depending on one's perspective. Here are some of the most intriguing and potentially unsettling discoveries. Near-Earth objects, or NEOs as we often call them, are these fascinating and sometimes intimidating visitors from our solar system's backyard. Think of them as cosmic nomads that have been nudged by the gravitational pull of planets, bringing them into Earth's neighborhood. These NEOs are a mixed bag. Some are comets made mostly of ice with a sprinkle of dust, creating those stunning tails we see in pictures when they're close to the sun. Then there are asteroids, the rocky ones, leftovers from the solar system's early days. Now picture this. These NEOs are on all sorts of orbits, some stretching out in long, drawn-out paths that bring them swooping close to the Sun and, by extension, to our own planet. This is where it gets interesting and a bit unsettling. When we think about what these NEOs could do if they crossed paths with Earth, it's like a cosmic game of roulette. NASA and other space agencies keep a close eye on these celestial wanderers. They use telescopes both on the ground and in space to track their movements and predict where they're heading. It's a complex dance of calculations, taking into account the push and pull of gravity from other cosmic bodies. Now let's talk about the impact scenarios. Small NEOs, those less than 25 meters in diameter, usually burn up in our atmosphere. But remember the Chelyabinsk meteor back in 2013? That was a small one, and it still caused quite a stir with its shockwaves. Then we have the medium-sized NEOs, ranging from 25 to 140 meters. If one of these hit Earth, we're talking about serious regional destruction, like creating massive craters or even triggering tsunamis if they take a dive in the ocean. And let's not even start on the large NEOs, those over 140 meters. They're the real heavy hitters, capable of causing global catastrophes. Think dinosaur extinction-level events. Speaking of which, let's roll back the cosmic clock to the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event 65 million years ago. That was one massive asteroid that left the Chicxulub crater in Mexico. It's widely believed to have wiped out the dinosaurs along with a host of other species. Then there's the Tunguska event in 1908. A smaller NEO exploded over Siberia, flattening an enormous area of forest. It's a stark reminder of the power these space rocks hold, even the smaller ones. But when we start talking about the bigger ones, the medium to large NEOs, it's a whole different story. These guys are rarer, luckily for us. We're talking about something that happens maybe once in thousands or even millions of years. But if one of them decides to make an unexpected visit, it's big news. We're talking about events that can really shake things up on Earth, like the one that made the dinosaurs history. Now, you might be wondering, can't we just predict when these space rocks will come calling? Well, despite all our fancy technology, it's still quite a challenge. The smaller NEOs are especially sneaky. They're tough to spot until they're almost on top of us. It's like trying to spot a firefly in a rock concert from the back row. But don't worry, we're not just sitting ducks here. There are some pretty cool ideas out there to prevent a cosmic smash-up. Scientists have thought about using what they call gravitational tractors, basically tugging an asteroid onto a different path. Then there's the idea of smacking it with a kinetic impactor, kind of like playing cosmic billiards. And if things get really serious, we could even go a bit Hollywood and think about using nuclear explosions to nudge them off course. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. This is where teamwork comes into play. This is a global affair. Organizations like the United Nations are in on this, discussing how countries can share info and work together if a dangerous NEO is spotted. It's like forming a planetary defense team, just like in the movies, but for real. Keeping the public in the loop is key too. It's important that people understand what NEOs are and what risks they bring. And hey, who doesn't want to be prepared for an asteroid strike? Governments and agencies are working on plans for what to do if one of these space rocks has Earth in its sights. And the quest for knowledge continues. NASA and other space agencies keep their eyes peeled, watching the skies for any new NEOs and keeping tabs on the ones we already know about. Missions like NASA's OSIRIS-REx and Japan's Hayabusa 2 are even going out there, visiting these NEOs, getting up close and personal, bringing back souvenirs, samples, for us to study. Now, moving on. Imagine this. We're living in a universe where the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears takes on a cosmic twist. In our sky, there are these special places around stars, known as the Goldilocks zone or the habitable zone. It's not too hot, not too cold, just perfect for liquid water, which we think is essential for life. Now that's a big deal because where there's water, there could be life as we know it. Now let's talk about how we find these potentially habitable exoplanets. There's this really cool method called the transit method. It's like when you're at a cafe and someone walks past the window, casting a shadow. Astronomers look for these shadows across stars to find planets. It's especially good for finding planets that like to snuggle close to their stars. But wait, there's more. There's also this thing called the radial velocity method. Imagine you're watching a friend on a merry-go-round. As they move towards and away from you, their speed seems to change. That's what astronomers look for in stars. They measure this wobble, caused by the gravitational tugs of orbiting planets, to find these hidden worlds. Now, let's talk discoveries. NASA's Kepler mission was like a planet-hunting superhero. It found thousands of exoplanets, many in habitable zones. One of its coolest finds was Kepler 452b, nicknamed Earth's cousin. Why? Because it's eerily similar to our home and sits comfortably in its star's Goldilocks zone. But the story doesn't end there. Enter TESS, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite, which has a knack for finding exoplanets around the brightest stars. These are easier to study, giving us a better chance of understanding these distant worlds. And then there's TRAPPIST-1, the rock star of exoplanet systems. It's got 7 Earth-sized planets, with several in the habitable zone. It's like a cosmic jackpot, offering us a unique chance to study these worlds, peering into their atmospheres and, who knows, maybe find signs of life. So let's dive deep into the rabbit hole of what these exoplanet discoveries really mean for us, in a way that would make your head spin. First off, we've got these potentially habitable planets out there, and they're shaking up our whole understanding of the universe. It's like we've been living in this cosmic bubble, thinking Earth is the only place for life. But now we're looking up at the stars and realizing we might just be one of many. This isn't just science talking. It's a philosophical mind-bender. It's got people thinking and rethinking about everything from our special status in the universe to the big questions of creation itself. And then there's the whole theological angle. These discoveries are sparking some major conversations in religious and spiritual communities. It's like we're opening a new chapter in the book of creation, one where life might be scattered across the cosmos. It's a game changer, making us ponder the nature of divine creation and our place in it. Now let's talk about the hunt for ET. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, is out there, scanning the skies for any hint of alien chit-chat. It's like trying to tune into a cosmic radio station hoping to catch a snippet of conversation from a civilization light years away. And the excitement's only going to ramp up with missions like the James Webb Space Telescope. This beast of a telescope is our ticket to peeping into exoplanet atmospheres, sniffing around for signs of life like water, oxygen, and maybe even little green guys. Okay, maybe not green, but you get the idea. But hold on, it's not just about finding life, it's about understanding life in all its wild and wonderful forms. Astrobiologists are having a field day with this. They're brainstorming about what life might look like on planets that are nothing like Earth. Think of it as biology, but with a sci-fi twist. And they're not just making wild guesses. They're looking at everything from the size of the planet to the type of star it orbits to figure out where life could pop up. But here's the kicker. What if we actually find intelligent life out there? It's a mind-boggling thought. How would we react? Would we reach out, say hello, and invite them over for cosmic coffee? Or would we keep our distance, just peeping through our cosmic telescope? It's not just a scientific question, it's an ethical and philosophical puzzle. And then there's this idea called the Great Filter. It's this theory that says, hey, maybe the reason we haven't found alien life is that there's some kind of cosmic roadblock that wipes out civilizations before they can phone home. It's a bit of a downer, but it's got scientists thinking about what that could mean for our future. Lastly, we've got to think about keeping our cosmic backyard clean. With all this talk about finding and maybe even visiting other planets, we've got to be super careful not to track our earthly germs all over the universe. It's like interstellar environmental protection, making sure we don't mess up other planets and they don't mess up ours. So what does all this mean? Well, it's changing the way we see ourselves in the universe. Every new planet we find in these habitable zones is like a new story waiting to be told. Could they host life? Are we alone?